Welcome to the Liberties of Dublin, to James's Street, the home of the Pearse Lyons Whisky Distillery. The distillery is located in an old ancient church dedicated to the memory of St. James. The church on this site is one of three that date back to the year 1196. The church you see today was built in 1861. Now, the church was deconsecrated in 1963. It's no longer a place of religious worship. It became available for purchase in 2013. Dr. Lyons and Deirdre Lyons purchased the building and placed the distillery within it. The inspiration for this was to tell the story of Irish whiskey, to tell the story of the Golden Triangle in Dublin, the place to be in the 19th century if you were producing whiskey or beer. The graveyard that you see, close location to the church, dates back to the 12th century. There are 100,000 people buried here on 2 small acres of land. As the church was restored and the graveyard was restored, the names, dates and stories of these people has been researched by the staff here at the distillery. Ex-members of the Irish Volunteers buried here, brewers, confidants and advisors to kings of England, 9 men who served in the First World War, and indeed 9 members of Pearse Lyons' family lie in the lower section of the graveyard. The wall on the southern boundary of the graveyard illustrates a simple solution to a very complex problem. The wall you see before you dates back to medieval times. As the construction process takes place here in the distillery, the archaeologists are concerned that the wall may be damaged, so they paint numbers on each of the bricks, take a photograph of the wall. If the wall is damaged during the construction process, the wall can be put back together like a simple jigsaw puzzle. We are now standing beneath the newly constructed spire of the church. There are 35 tons of concrete and 11 tons of plate glass above your head. The spire was damaged by lightning in the year 1929, and as part of the reconstruction process, this glass spire was designed and now stands proudly on top of the church. It has become a distinctive landmark here in St. James's Street, and it's known as the Liberties Lounge. We are now standing in the body of the church, and we can view this beautiful restoration. But the church did not always look like this. 2003 to 2013, the church was used for many different purposes. Once it was home to a general store, to a vegetable store, and finally a lighting emporium. As part of the restoration, beneath the floor of the church, the remains of 400 bodies were found. These were carefully examined by the archaeologists. They've been reinterred in a special crypt at the rear of the church. Within the church, we see evidence of the skills of great craftsmen. The archways you see here were constructed in Caen in northern France and made from limestone. Gazing up to the roof, you can witness pitch pine beams, which were sourced from timber in British Columbia and Canada. Here we stand before our copper stills, Mighty Molly and Little Lizzie, named after relatives of Dr. Lyons. The pot stills were manufactured in Louisville in Kentucky, transported to Ireland. We dropped the 2 stills down through a hole in the ceiling, and hence here they are today producing Pearse Lyons whiskey. The southern facade of the church displays a stained glass window dedicated to the famous El Camino de Santiago de Compostela, a medieval pilgrimage that made its way from Dublin to Compostela in Galicia in northern Spain. For many hundreds of years, Irish pilgrims have made their way from Dublin to this famous Basilica of St. James in Compostela. Deirdre Lyons designed this stained glass window in honour of the Camino. On the left-hand side, we can see the Camino shell, the scallop, the traditional drinking vessel of St. James. The centre of the trippage bears evidence of the Irish pilgrim dressed in green robes making his way from the church on his journey down to Compostela. On the right, we see again the symbol of the Basilica of St. James and the harp, the symbol of our nation. Casting your eyes to the wall above the bar, you'll see a beautiful stained glass window which tells the story of Eddie Dunn, an uncle of Dr. Lyons. Eddie was one of 6 generations of the Dunn family that worked within the cooperage trade. The cooper was a very prized trade here in Dublin. They were amongst the highest skilled and highest paid tradesmen in the city. It's easy to understand that, because it was their responsibility to preserve whiskey, a dear, costly and expensive commodity to produce. To produce whiskey, you must first produce beer, and this takes place here in our brew house, which is on the east side of the church. The distiller will cultivate the alcohol from the beer and produce whiskey. Above the brew house, we illustrate the story of the monks, the traditional distillers in medieval times. From farm to whiskey bottle, we see evidence of the barley, the yeast, and the production of whiskey. In the last number of years, Irish whisky has once again become very popular internationally, and here in Pearse Lyons Whisky we're proud to play a role in that. Pearse Lyons Distillery is Dublin's only boutique distillery. Here we produce small batch, handcrafted whisky, which is some of the finest whisky that Ireland has to offer.